The Why Me Project, an exclusive presentation of Faith Strong Today.
It's amazing to me, Holly, we say all the time that, everybody that we talk to is always so busy. Mm-hmm. And last week when we were supposed to have this happen, Fox and Rob are airport hopping and jumping in cars, and they're anywhere and everywhere. So I'm just excited this week, Holly, that we have a chance to finally sit down and have a conversation.
Yes, but they are still in the car. Guys, where are we going today?
It's the campaign trail.
Fox, Rob, who are you and where did you come from?
For those that are listening in for the very first time, collectively, we are Fox and Rob. We're a formerly incarcerated couple who spent more than 21 years and 21 years and 4 days, to be exact, behind prison walls before receiving clemency in 2018. We are also the subjects of the Oscar-nominated film Time that is now streaming live on Amazon Prime Video. And if you didn't get enough of us in Time, the documentary, you would actually find the rest of it in Time, the untold story of the love that held us together when incarceration kept us apart. It is the untold story of all of those intricacies that were left out in the documentary itself.
The literary companion, if you would.
Yes,
there
indeed.
You go. Can't have one without the other.
Right.
Well, let's just talk about the beginning of your story then. I mean, when I saw like the quick little bylines, like you were together but incarcerated, that seems wild. So how did you guys even meet?
Actually, we met through a mutual friend of ours. I was home on leave from the Navy. And ran into a mutual friend between Fox and I. And it was one of those moments, I'm sure you've heard it said a million times before, that it was love at first sight. It just took me the rest of the evening to convince Fox that she was equally in love with me and should run off and start a life with me. And I guess I won, because now we're looking at almost 36 years later. And as they say, they're still together.
Aww.
So let's talk then, your first 6 months, your first year of marriage. Was it wedding bliss?
Well, after 10 years of dating off again and on again and 3 children between us, Rob finally took me to the altar and took my hand in marriage.
Yeah, I hit over head with a club, drug her into the cave and said, "Woman, you're going to marry me."
That sounds like Johnny and his wife's story.
And so we had, here we were, 1997, April 24th of 1997, Rob had proposed. We weren't even dating at the time. And to be honest, for those, Holly, that maybe are giving up on love, I, in that moment, just thought that, he had a son, we had a son together, then I had a son from a previous relationship. It was just hard to even conceive that we would find our way back to one another after all of that. But we did. And when he came back around, we were literally just best friends and parents. And he was, and one night on a bridge, we were went to a birthday party for a friend, and we stood out on the bridge together. And it was just like, a power that was higher than either of us.
It was a fire that never died.
Yeah, connected us. And so by the time we made it home that evening, the fire was still lit. And, I'm like, what are we doing here? I thought we were just like going to be roommates and parents. And, and he says, well, Fox, I've dated you long enough. I don't want to date you anymore. And I'm like, so what you saying? You want to get married? And he was like, yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. And I was like, okay, well, when are you talking about? Right. He says, Fox, I'd marry you tonight if I could. After 10 years of dating off and on and us not having a conversation seriously about being married until that night, you can only imagine how my heart dropped. And I said, well, I'm busy tonight, maybe tomorrow. And so the next day we decided that we would elope because we wanted to buy a house and, really start our family off right. And we found a wedding chapel in Kissimmee, St. Cloud, Florida, drove down, left our kids with our sister-in-law and brother-in-law, drove down to Kissimmee, St. Cloud, Florida.
What was the cutest little white chapel you'll ever want to lay eyes on?
Yes. We got married and then spent the day at Disney Disneyland, riding the rides and having fun. And that evening, we bungee jumped to consummate our marriage. So it was just like a whirlwind of joy and, just all at the same time. And then 6 months after, through 6 months of marriage, we come back home. We bought our house. We started our business. Everything is looking up. And then Murphy's Law happens. We found out that the dream home that we had purchased had a cracked foundation, and the addition that the previous owner put on the roof was done so poorly that it rained. It like the first big rain came through and it flooded the entire house out. And so it wasn't just a matter of fixing the roof, but that the whole structure had to be redone. From that point, with our business, we realized that we were novice, and we had opened our business and broke the 3 main rules of business: location, location, location. We had opened a hip hop clothing store, which was our dream, in an industrial part of our city. And we would have to stand out in the middle of the street to try to get people to come in and even know that we were there. We were just happy to get open. We never thought about where you're opening at. After that, I was teaching as an adjunct professor at the university. And a couple of months after Rob and I married, they terminated the division that I was in, the program that I was in. So then I was unemployed. If that's not enough, the investor that we had for the business, that was supposed to help us as we tried to grow past our location era, pulled out on us at the last moment. And then if that wasn't enough, our son, our baby boy, started having seizures that the doctors couldn't diagnose. So you talk about the first 6 months of our marriage, and that's what it looked like, Holly and Johnny. So I remember Rob asking me in that moment, when we found ourselves facing 297 years in prison, trying to regain financial solvency, Rob asked me, he says, "Well, Fox, we made a vow, for better or for worse. Did you think that the better was going to come first?"
Valid question.
Yeah, I thought I'd at least get a good, solid 10. They said a 7-year itch, not 7-month itch, And so I thought we'd at least have some good times under our belt before all of the torrential rains came pouring in. And it just didn't happen like that. So I would say also to young married couples that, the good doesn't always come on the front end, and you can't expect that. Just know that the good is love, and love is the good, and that it is the foundation that can carry you through every other challenge that you have in your life.
I can't imagine. That's just like 7 months. I'm calling it quits.
Right. I mean, you're like, oh, maybe I did something wrong here. My girlfriend came over a couple of weeks ago, and she says, we were telling her our union story and how it all began. She says, "Wow, 6 months? That must have been an incredible 6 months." I was like, it was so incredible. It was so good that I would spend the next 21 years and 4 days trying to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
When you were told that you were going to spend however many years it was in prison, did you think that you would ever get out?
Oh, we knew we would get out.
Yes.
We had to know that. If we didn't know that, then that means that we would have had to accept that Rob was going to die there because of the amount of time that they gave him. It was a practical life sentence. It was 60 years in prison.
It wasn't the kind of knowing that comes with it, with a good time date that says after you do so much amount of time in prison, behave a certain kind of way, and then you're going to discharge. It was more so of the one that allows you to get dressed the way that each of you got dressed today. Yesterday, you laid those clothes out not knowing that tomorrow would even come. But the fact is that you've witnessed enough yesterdays to make plans for tomorrow that you have no promise of seeing. So it's an act of faith. And we acted out of faith. So what you experience through the documentary, and as you turn the pages of the books, is just that. It's an act of faith.
Every page is
Every
an act
day
of faith.
Is an act of faith. Every hour is an act of faith when you're living under the circumstances that our family was living under for 21 years and 4 days.
Let's talk about the faith. When did your faith in God begin?
Man, Holly, to be honest with you and Johnny, I would have to say that it happened for me the moment that I got in the backseat of the police car. Understanding that after I got into the back seat of the police car, that was after having entered a bank, jumping over the counter and demanding cash from the tellers behind it, to running out of the bank in a frenzy and being shot at by police officers, and then finally being captured and then placed into the back seat of a police car, while my nephew, who was my co-defendant on the case, was still at large. And sirens are blaring everywhere. I'm watching as my wife is passing by in the distance, and I'm in that moment realizing how, boy, I had really screwed this up. It was like all of my life had flashed before me in that moment. And in that moment, I realized not only how much trouble I was in, but also how much trouble I potentially could have placed myself, considering all of those circumstances. And it was in that moment that I guess that you can hear tell when Job, faced with his own afflictions, to no fault of his own, questioned and asked God, what is this all about? When Jesus was on the cross and had to ask a similar question, God, what is this all about? Or Joseph, the first person that we see that go into a state of incarceration in the Bible, surely had to be asking himself, how did I ever get sold down this road right here, right? But in all of the cases, apostasy is something that happens when we totally turn away from our faith, or we turn away from our convictions. But like Job, like Joseph, like Jesus, wow, all of their names start with J. I just caught that in the moment. Y'all bear with me. But in the moment, I realized that none of them let go of the faith. They questioned, but never let go of their faith. And it was much of the same for me. It was in that moment that I came to the realization, why not me?
So when it comes to getting out, how much of an adjustment is there from going into a life of every day you're told when to eat, when to get up, and now all of a sudden you have this freedom that you are able to experience something that you haven't experienced in 21 years and 4 days?
Man, again, it is an amazing feat, when you think about it. Based on our 13th Amendment to the Constitution, both state and federal,
in the
United States, we look at it and we understand that slavery has been abolished in our country, except if you've been duly convicted of a crime. So going from 21 years and 4 days of being incarcerated to now being returned to my family on 40 years of parole, where I still have to report and where I still have a curfew and I still have to do community service, even though I've spent the last 21 years and 4 days of my life working for 4 cents an hour. It's like going from slavery to sharecropping. You got to figure that the moment that I went into prison in 1997, they had just created Windows 95 2 years prior to. MySpace had become a thing and was no longer a thing by the time I came home.
Yeah.
So you used to flag at the gas attendant and say, hey, buddy, turn the pumps on. Yeah. When I came home, the pumps were talking to you, and I was trying to figure out how in the hell to get gas in my car. So I had the same communication issues that people would probably have if they have been forced for many years to not be able to read, and reading would be a violation, or would be contraband, books being contraband, technology for people that are cast away inside of prison walls. It is like having no books. It's like not being able to speak the language of the people that you dwell among.
Being illiterate.
So when I came home, I was socially illiterate, and I had to figure it out. I had to learn.
You're going through all of this and you come out of it, and now you have, a documentary, you have a book, you're working on a campaign trail to be the next president. It's like there's nothing that you guys can't do. How was the book released? Because we're looking back now a couple weeks. How was the book released for you guys?
It was absolutely, I think Rob and I just had to hold each other's hand and think about, wow, kind of felt like the night we consummated our marriage by bungee jumping. It has been so powerful to see when two are united as one, what the power of that oneness can do, what that power of that oneness can overcome. Yeah. And so we pause for a moment to watch the people around us and just thinking about, how we spent almost the entire year writing the book. And I can see why people don't write books every day. It is so much work.
Yeah.
And then when you talk about a memoir, who do you want to include? What do you want to say? How's that person going to feel when you speak your truth about your experience in regards to them? And especially when you calculate in Louisiana's criminal justice system and having the fortitude, the courage to share what your experience is or has been, knowing that you very well can face repercussions for what your truth is, because not everybody's going to be happy with what you have to say about this system. So that's another level of boldness that you have to be ready to endure the repercussions of. So it is intimidating. It's intimidating. It is breathtaking. It is
daunting.
It was, just another gift from God. And all I could say was that if you brought me this far, then I'm going to trust you to protect me and guide us through the rest of this. But our hopes is that people will be able to sit with our truth. It's one thing to watch the movie and the visuals, but it's another thing to sit with our words, our thoughts, our prayers, our hopes for our children, our hopes that raised from the pits of hell when I was incarcerated and Rob was incarcerated. It's a beautiful piece. And I don't just say it because we've written it. I say it because it has allowed us to see the power of God in our own lives and to be able to share that power of love of God. And what God has done for us on our journey. I know that if it's possible for us, it's possible for your listeners out there that are struggling with the same affliction, whether it's incarceration, whether it is drug abuse, whether it is health issues, whether it's financial crisis,
or relationships.
Yeah, love conquers all.
Well, it's interesting too, because you were incarcerated. However, a lot of people are walking free, but also incarcerated. They're in their own kind of prison. And
yes, indeed.
Freedom can come in all different shapes and different ways. And so it's just, there's so many parallels that I think a lot of people can draw from your experience and just applying it to their own personal prison.
That's right. That's right. Well said, Holly.
Sometimes I say smart things.
You just got to be a part of something.
Oh my goodness. I want to know though. I mean, Fox, you are now in politics. From prison to politics.
That's the second book.
One, Holly.
There we go.
Johnny, we got to get her a book deal.
How
does that happen?
Holly, I've been in politics my whole life. The only way that I understood, our politics means that you are making laws, and our laws are what impacts our quality of life in our society. And so if I wanted to change the quality of life that my family was experiencing, then I had to do it by changing the policies and the laws. And so I have spent the past 20 years of my life at the state capitol advocating for quality of life issues for families. And so to me, this is really more of a just natural step to now get a vote that I can cast instead of asking somebody to vote for me. To file a bill on my behalf, now being able to take the things that I find important and author that legislation myself and file it and then work to make it law. It's always been a part of who we are because that's where the change is. And so we can't sit on the side and complain about whatever is going on in our society. We got to get engaged. And I knew that, as I said in the documentary Time, after I had retained the last high price lawyer, I clearly understand that if Rob was coming home, it was going to be totally up to me. I was going to have to figure that out. Nobody else was going to come in and do it for us. And that's what we did. He studied law and he'd give me the law he had studied, and I would go and try to get the law passed.
It's easy for someone to do nothing, and you both chose to do something. In the hills and valleys of life, we ask God that question, why me? Why are you using me in this way? Or why do I have to go through this? Can you guys think of a moment where you asked that question, God, why me?
When I was in that prison, with 75 other women with open showers and open toilets, many women who had been sentenced to decades of time. in this small parish jail that was housing state offenders. And I looked around that dorm room with these women, and we are all at the lowest rung of life in our society. And I said to myself, God, why me? I'm a college educated woman. I don't have these issues, that issues. Why did you send me here? I know people that have done far more than I have and got probation. They didn't go to prison. So I know if I'm here, you got a purpose for me being here. And from the moment I stepped foot in there, I opened myself up to say, why? I had to search for the meaning in the suffering, Holly. And for me, I was saying that maybe it's because I thought about when they talked about Jesus coming into a city. That was my revelation. And I said that, I've heard tell that when Jesus just came into a city, that the whole energy was different and everybody knew that Jesus was there just from the presence. And so I said, if I'm here, then I want the energy here to reflect that I'm here. I want to be a reflection of Jesus in this atmosphere, that let my light so shine unto man, so that maybe I can bring some of these women, give them some of my hope, give them some of my love, and elevate their path on this dark journey. And that's what I did. A couple of days after being in prison, I stood up on the top of the bunk and said, I'm a motivational speaker in society. So I figured if anybody could use a good motivational word, it's us in the year. And I stood up and gave my first message, and from that point on,
what was your message? You got to give them.
my message was Humpty Dumpty. Because earlier I was listening to a church service and the pastor had preached about Humpty Dumpty, and I was like, that's a pretty good word. And so I took that word, mixed it in with a little gumbo, and delivered that message later on that evening to the women in my dorm room. And the message is that Humpty Dumpty couldn't be put back together again, but since we're God's children, unlike Humpty Dumpty, we can put our lives back together again. We can pick up the pieces of our lives and we can put them back together again. And that's what God has done for us.
Amazing. Rob, what about for you? You talked about your why not me moment. Was that tied into your why me moment?
And my why me moment, Holly, was on a daily basis. I mean, when you wake up in a place, and as Fox made mention, you share all of the places that used to be, places that you didn't have to share. You didn't have to share your toilet. You didn't have to share your sink and, all of those things. But when you are in a house or housed in an area where there are more than 100 men in one dormitory, and there are 500 of us on a pod, and there are 2,000 of us on a unit, and there are 6,000 of us in the entire population, and we're all competing for the same things that are basically in small quantity. It creates a level of frustration. It creates a level of despair. It creates a level of hopelessness. It creates all of the necessary recipe items needed for destruction. And when you wake up every day of your life like that, men screaming and yelling in the middle of the night because someone has warmed up hot water and put not aftershave, but magic shave in the concoction because they intend to do the person harm. I'm talking about a deep level of harm. When you find men that carve out knives, from steel and metals, and then you hear, the metals clacking in the middle of the night when it's dark in space because they're at war, they're in conflict with one another. These are scary moments, and they are life trying kind of moments. And when you wake up in that type of chaos on a day-to-day basis, every day, second, moment, you're always asking, why me? And it's only through the asking of why me that the answers even start to come in. So you start, as Fox made mention, you start to find meaning in your suffering. She delivered to me, one of my first books was by Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was housed in a concentration camp many years ago. But in it, the book was entitled Man's Search for Meaning. And in it, he just shared with me a lot of words and thoughts that I needed in my moment, because I was also asking, much like Viktor Frankl, much like Nelson Mandela, and many of the other people who have been confined in spaces like this, why me? And then in the why me, being delivered the answers and then hence finding their purpose and meaning for the suffering in their life. And I guess it's the thing that that it's in those darkest of places that God performs his miracles. And it's from there that you're able to walk out of those places. If you've had a chance to see the documentary and you see me wearing the shirt that says never give up, understanding the story even behind that, you got to go to the book for that one in order to get that part of the story. I'm not going to share that with you. But
no spoiler
understanding
alerts.
that, right? But understanding that T-shirt had been created over a decade prior to me wearing it out of the prison, but it was only to speak to the declaration that I had made, and that is that I would never die here, that I'm going to leave this place one day, and when I leave this place, I'm going to wear this shirt to reveal to all of the world that I trusted and believed in God through my darkest of moments, and true to his word or her word, I was delivered.
You better preach.
Yes.
Amen. The doc on Amazon Prime. The book is available now. foxandrob.com, at Fox and Rob on the socials. You two, I'm so glad that we were finally able to make this happen. Thank you for taking some time and sharing your heart today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for having us.
I know that it wasn't supposed to be, or maybe it was supposed to be motivational, but I feel like I could run through a wall now talking to those two.
I know, right? I'm so encouraged. It's kind of
Right?
like, what can I do next?
Right?
Like, how do you spend that amount of time apart from each other and still come out of it the other side stronger?
And what I love too is that they're tag teaming it. He's reading, he's finding things out, then he's going to Fox, and she's like, okay, I'm going to do that. And they're a great 1-2 combination.
I know they're a dynamic duo.
They're superheroes and they didn't even know it.
Seriously.
We appreciate Fox and Rob, which they sound like superhero names, for taking some time. We've been trying to get that done for the last little bit, and I mean, like you had said, they're so busy and flying and driving and everything. So it's cool that we finally were able to get that done.
And I'm excited to check out their video that is on, they said, Amazon Prime.
Yes,
which rhymes with time. So it's easy to remember. And just wishing them all the best as they pursue God's passion in their own hearts.
Amazon Prime, time, which rhyme.
Poet, didn't know it.
Oh, my Lord.
I'll see myself
Thank you to
out.
everybody who subscribes, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is that you download. And then we also have all of our socials, Holly.
Exactly. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and yes, newly to the YouTube. And we're working on just bringing that up to speed too, because we've got so much video that we want to show you guys as well. So check it out. Stuff will be releasing slowly over the next few months.
That's good. So check out that, rate, review, tell friends, family members, and complete strangers.
And also go to faithstrongtoday.com.